always thought being the strong one in the family was a compliment, until the day I found out they'd used my name to commit over $6 million in fraud. They forged my signature, ruined my credit, and opened accounts I never knew existed, all while smiling across the dinner table like nothing was wrong. And when I finally confronted them, my mother had the nerve to whisper, "You did this. You destroyed our family." "No, Mum, you did." So I walked into that courtroom with the truth, the documents, and a promise they'd never get to hurt anyone like this again. They begged me not to press charges. But this is what happens when the family's strong one finally fights back. I was wrapping up a client meeting at Morris & Associates on a typical Tuesday afternoon when I received the call that rocked my world. I'm Vivian, a corporate lawyer who has been establishing a solid reputation for honesty over the past 10 years, only to find out that my own family has been subtly undermining it. "Miss Pierce," Jade Mark said with some hesitation, "this is Jade Mark Santos from First National. There seems to be an irregularity with your sister's mortgage payments." I shuffled papers on my desk and scowled. "My sister's mortgage? I think you have the wrong person." "No, that's actually why I'm calling. You're listed as a co-signer on Pierce's mortgage for the property at 1544 Maple Avenue." My pen fell to the desk with a crash. "That's impossible. I never signed anything. Our records show otherwise. The paperwork was processed 6 months ago. Your parents brought in all the documentation." My folks. The room began to spin as things fell into place. Their apprehensive Christmas demeanor, the way they shifted the conversation when I brought up Sienna's new home, and their insistence that I sign some standard documents at Mom's birthday dinner. Despite the earthquake in my chest, I managed to say, "I need to see these documents immediately," in a very steady voice. Jade Mark paused before responding, "Of course. I can email them now. But there's more. The payments are 3 months behind." I held onto my desk's edge. "How much?" "Just over $14,000. The number struck me like a blow to the body. After giving Jade Mark a robotic thank you and hanging up, I quickly called Elliot. I needed a friend and a lawyer at the same time, and he had been my best friend since law school. "Hey, stranger," he said with a smile. I yelled out, "My family forged my signature. They put me on Sienna's mortgage without telling me. Jesus Christ." Elliot's voice immediately became formal. "Don't do anything yet. I'm coming to your office." 20 minutes later, I strolled behind Elliot as he looked over the documents Jade Mark had provided. He gestured toward a signature and said, "Look at this. They didn't even try hard to match your handwriting." With my stomach in knots, I leaned in. My mother's attempt to mimic my signature was evident from the K's characteristic curl. It buzzed on my phone. On the screen was Mom's happy face. I showed Elliot. "Answer it," he said with a mouth. "Stay calm." I inhaled deeply before selecting accept. "Hi, Mom. Sweetie, are you free for dinner tonight? Your father's making his famous lasagna." The casual tone infuriated me. "Actually, funny you should call. I just had an interesting chat with Jade Mark Santos." "Quiet," said. "Oh, honey, we were going to tell you." "Tell me what?" "That you forged my signature? That you made me legally responsible for Sienna's house without." Mom said, "My knowledge, it's not like that," in a defensive tone. "Sienna needed help. And you're doing so well. The bank wouldn't approve her loan otherwise." My voice broke as I asked, "So you committed fraud? Do you have any idea what this could do to my career?" "Don't be dramatic, Vivian. We're family. Families help each other." The remarks were sour. "Help each other? Or help Sienna? I'm coming over tonight. Have Sienna there too. We're going to fix this." "Honey." With trembling palms, I hung up. Elliot's laptop was already displaying further documents. Quietly, he stated, "There's definitely grounds for legal action. But are you sure you want to go that route?" I collapsed in my chair, completely worn out. "I don't know what I want. Accept answers." Elliot began taking notes, saying, "Then let's get them. But first, we need to protect you. I'm seeing red flags all over these documents." "What do you mean?" He glanced at the screen. "These mortgage papers. They're just the tip of the iceberg. There's language here suggesting other accounts, other obligations. We need to find out exactly what they've tied you to." As I looked at the papers, The betrayal of my parents grew stronger than ever in every fond memory I had of them. Family dinners, all of them. Those pleased grins when I found a companion. Were they simply preparing me to serve as their unintentional source of financial security? My voice nothing more than a whisper. Elliot. Help me burn it all down. He grabbed my hand as he reached over the desk. We'll do better than that. We'll make sure they face every consequence they've earned. Starting with dinner tonight. I nodded, my anger and resolve solidifying into a clear, icy substance. Did they intend to turn my accomplishments against me? All right. They were going to see just how effective my retaliation could be. By midnight, Elliot's workplace resembled a crime scene. Every surface was covered in documents, and his whiteboard was a maze of interconnected yellow sticky notes. We had not attended the family meal. I ignored all of the texts from Mom, Dad, and Sienna that had flooded my phone. This was more significant. Elliot held up a credit card statement and said, "Look at this. A platinum card opened in your name 3 months ago. The address is your parents' house." I took the paper and looked over the charges. I never applied for this card. And these purchases, designer bags, spa treatments, restaurant bills. This is all Sienna's spending pattern. They're getting sloppy, Griffin said as he frantically typed on his laptop. The card was opened with an online application. Want to bet they used your social security number? We both jumped when there was a knock on the door. Jade, who was carrying 3 cups of coffee, was from the company's financial crimes branch. Her smile was knowing. Thought you could use reinforcements, she added. She distributed the coffee. Elliot told me everything. Vivian, this is very messed up. I sipped appreciatively. Is there anything more they might have opened in my name that you could help us find? Jade pulled up a chair and remarked. Already on it. I can access databases that will display all of the accounts connected to your social security number. However, you should probably take a seat for this. I felt sick to my stomach. How awful. A trio of credit cards. 2 loans for personal use. And, there's something strange with your investing accounts, she said, pausing as her eyes narrowed at the screen. Elliot bent over. Strange how? They have been used as security for other debts by someone. At first inspection, the documents appear authentic, but the timestamps don't match. They were backdated paperwork. Once more my phone buzzed. It was Sienna this time. Pick up please. Dad is angry and Mom is crying. As a family we must discuss this. I showed Elliot the message. Reply, he said. But don't reveal anything. Before we confront them, we must ascertain the extent of this. Still at work, I typed. Tomorrow we'll speak. With her eyes fixed on her computer, Jade gave a gentle whistle. Vivian, how recently have you looked at your credit score? 6 months beforehand. There were more than 820. Now it's 644. The room whirled a little. Everything I had fought for, including my carefully cultivated credit history and financial reputation, was destroyed. Because I was chosen to serve as my family's personal ATM. Griffin, looking at a document, replied slowly, There's something else. These loan requests, they're not only making use of your present earnings. According to your career path, they are listing future estimates. They're counting on you getting promoted soon. How could they possibly be aware of that? I made a demand. I understood. Because your dad's golf buddy is on the board of the firm. The parts came together with a click. He must have brought up the partnership track conversations. Jade started stacking the papers. All right, what we know is as follows. About $400,000 in debt has been manufactured in your name by them. Although the mortgage is the largest component, these additional accounts imply that a safety net is being established. My estimation? Sienna's house of cards is about to collapse, Elliot continued. And they're getting ready for it by using you as a sacrifice. I gazed at the desk below. I stated it sourly. They took advantage of me. Griffin picked up a new legal pad. Tonight, we must record everything. We begin damage control tomorrow. Setting up fraud alerts and freezing your credit are the first steps. After that, we can test each account they created without permission. I paused before saying, but the mortgage. Sienna might lose her house if we do that. With firmness, Jade stated, that is not your problem. They made their decisions. They must now deal with the repercussions. Another text message from Mom appeared on my phone. For your sister, we took this action. They had always referred to me as the strong one. You've always been the strong one. Please understand. Their dependable daughter, capable of managing any situation. I realized now that it wasn't a praise, but rather an excuse to exploit me. I need to know one thing, I replied, turning to face Elliot. Is it possible to determine with certainty that they falsified my signature? The timestamps alone prove you couldn't have signed these documents, he said with a gloomy nod. You spent half of the application dates in court. We can also have handwriting analysis done. I got to my feet, suddenly full of rage, and said, good. Because tomorrow, I'm not just freezing my credit. I'll see to it that no one else is ever subjected to this again. With a raised eyebrow, Jade asked, what are you thinking? I believe we should speak with Jade Mark Santos one more. He wishes to know if his bank falsified any paperwork. I grinned sarcastically and said, well, fraud investigations tend to uncover all sorts of interesting things once he files his report. Elliot began to collect the papers. Are you certain about this? There's no turning back once we get moving. I read through my family's texts, each one assuming that I would give in, that I would comprehend, that I would give up everything to keep them safe, like I always did. I'm sure, I replied. It's time they learned what the strong one is really capable of. I entered the home without knocking, and the aroma of Dad's lasagna filled the air. Aside from the stress on their expressions, my parents and Sienna sitting at the dining room table made the ideal family photo. In my hand, the manila packet seemed heavy with evidence. We saved you a plate, Mom remarked, attempting to sound normal. Let's cut the pretense, I said, dropping the envelope on the table. This is what I discovered last night. Do you want to explain, or should I begin first? I grabbed the envelope as Dad reached for it, saying no. You've taken care of my paperwork sufficiently. Don't take that tone with us, he said. We're your parents. Parents don't commit identity theft against their children. It wasn't supposed to be like this, Sienna said, breaking down in tears. The house was a wise purchase. All I needed was assistance with the down payment. The residence? This goes way beyond the house, Sienna, I said with a bitter laugh. 3 credit cards. Individual loans. Utilizing my investment accounts as security. Mom's face turned white. How did? Mom, I practice law. When you were faking my signature, did you forget that? Or did you simply assume that I would be too weak to resist? Dad's voice rose as he replied, we did it because we love you both. You had the means to help your sister when she needed it. Funny how you never asked if I wanted to, I concluded for him. I had the means. I'll reimburse you for everything. I promise, I just need time, Sienna said, crying. Is it time? You spent $14,000 at Nordstrom last month, I said, taking out her credit card statements. An additional $9,000 at that Vegas spa. In what precise manner do you intend to repay this? The quiet was overwhelming. That's what I thought. I went to my parents. And you too, getting intimate knowledge about my career prospects through Dad's link at my firm? That is a new low, I remarked harshly. You don't understand what it's like, watching one daughter succeed while the other struggles, Mom said, abruptly getting to her feet and speaking tremblingly. We needed to strike a balance. Equalize things? By ruining my credit, my voice broke. By putting my career at risk? My legal license. Don't be dramatic, Dad began. I interrupted him, though. Dramatic? Let me explain the dramatic part. I have a meeting with Jade Mark Santos tomorrow morning. For each account you opened in my name, I'm reporting fraud. I'm going to call the police after that. You wouldn't, Sienna said, her sobbing breaking into hiccups. Try me. Mom grabbed my hand. I walked away. We can't figure this out as a family. Your sister's house is not my problem. You've missed 3 months' worth of mortgage payments, I said, turning to Sienna. How do you intend to resolve that? With her gaze fixed on the table, she added, Mom and Dad said they'd help. How much money? The credit cards that are in my name are fully charged, I demanded. Payments on the debts are past due. What is the source of this assistance? More quiet. That's what I thought. I took one last document out and placed it on the table. This is an official declaration that denies any awareness of or agreement with these accounts. I'm submitting it to all relevant banks and credit bureaus. You'll destroy us, Dad muttered. It was a slap of words. No. You both damaged yourselves. And in the process you attempted to destroy me. Sienna muttered, I'm afraid, but I can't lose my house. I am unable to. I have no idea how to resolve this. I hesitated for a second, staring at my younger sister's tear-streaked face, and then I recalled how they had carefully planned their lie, stolen my identity, and turned my success against me. Actions have consequences, I remarked icily, so you should be afraid. Greetings from yours. Mom began to cry, big, dramatic sobs that used to make me give in right away. We are related. How can you treat your family like this? Relatives, I collected my papers. Families don't steal from one another. Fraud is not committed by family. A family does not give up one child to support the spending addiction of another. Sienna stretched for me and said, please, Vivian. I'll do anything. Don't report this, please. We can figure something out. I turned to face my wailing mother, my irate father, and my frantic sister. The people who reared me, molded me, and then betrayed me without hesitation were my family. You have 23 hours, I finally stated. Either you come clean to Jade Mark yourself, or I do it for you myself. In any case, this concludes tomorrow. I ignored their cries behind me as I left. My phone buzzed in my car. Elliot texted me. How was it? I typed back. They are still attempting to control me, but they will discover who they reared tomorrow. What occurs when the resilient person at last asserts her rights? I saw them gather together, undoubtedly already calculating their next move, through the dining room window as I started the engine, but this time I was 10 steps ahead and I wasn't going back. When I got at Jade's office the following morning, it resembled a war room, with several screens showing financial records and a printer humming nonstop, spitting out more proof. She spun her monitor in my direction and said, you won't believe this. Your sister's spending isn't random. There's a pattern. What do you mean? I asked, leaning in and looking over the transactions. Pay attention to the timing. All significant purchases fall during your parents' social gatherings, such as board member meetings, charity galas, and country club dinners. I came to the realization that she was maintaining appearances to ensure that everyone believed the family was doing well. Jade brought up another screen and said, I discovered a shadow account. Your parents have been transferring funds in an attempt to hide the evidence. When my phone buzzed, Dad texted me. Please rethink your stance as we have a meeting with Jade Mark this afternoon. I showed Jade the message and said, they're trying to get ahead of me, but they don't know what we found. And speaking of finding things, there's more. Your sister has been using your credentials to apply for jobs. What? I stopped. I found these in the background check databases. She's been submitting resumes with your law degree and bar admission. Just changing the name, she said, passing me a stack of documents. That's not just fraud. That could get her arrested, the speaker said, causing the room to spin a little. Elliot, who I hadn't even heard enter, remarked from the doorway, it gets worse. I just got off the phone with a headhunter friend. Sienna used your credentials to interview for 3 positions, and one company was about to make her an offer. Did she really think she could pull that off? I asked, sinking into a chair. She would have a foot in the door and a wage history to leverage by the time people figured it out, Jade added. When my phone buzzed once more, it was Jade Mark. Please come to the bank right away. Your parents are here, and they have a completely different tale. They're trying to spin this before I can provide evidence. Of course they are, I murmured. Let's go. I have everything we need to prove the forgeries, said Elliot, reaching for his briefcase. Wait, Jade said, bringing up another paper. Take this as well. It's evidence that your parents gained unauthorized access to your investment accounts. The IP address is linked to their home computer. Dad made a firm, obviously mid-spin gesture as Mom sat in Jade Mark's office wiping at her eyes with a tissue. Are you ready? Elliot said softly. More than ready, I said, straightening my back. As we entered, the room became quiet and Mom's eyes grew wide when she saw Elliot. Dad began, this is a family matter. No, I interrupted him in a stern tone, this is a criminal matter. I have proof that my sister and parents committed multiple counts of fraud using my identity, I said to Jade Mark. Now wait a minute, Dad sprang to his feet. Unless you would rather have this conversation at the police station, Elliot replied firmly, sit down. Clearly uneasy, Jade Mark glanced between us and said, your parents say they had your verbal permission. They didn't. I moved forward and started arranging papers. Here are the fake signatures. Here are the illegal account access logs. And here, I put a pile on top of it, is proof that my sister committed employment fraud by applying for jobs she wasn't eligible for using my credentials. Mom started crying again, saying we were desperate. Sienna needed. I yelled, you committed crimes, multiple crimes, and now you have a choice. I don't care what Sienna needed. This is very serious, Jade Mark said, his expression deepening as he picked up the evidence of fraud. We're providing you an opportunity to deal with this internally first because we understand it, Elliot stated, adding, but if you don't, our next destination is the district attorney's office. You would send your own sister to jail? Dad asked, his face turning pale from red. I retorted, you would forge your daughter's signature? Use her career to support your lies? You would steal your daughter's identity? I'll need to report this to our fraud department and freeze all associated accounts immediately, said Jademark, clearing his throat. That's not required, Mom said. Yes, it is, I answered, fixing her gaze. And now for the next step. You're going to confess to everything, you're going to shut down all of the fraudulent accounts, and you're going to be subject to whatever penalties the bank determines. Or? Dad questioned. I calmly and resolutely answered, or I press criminal charges. Your choice. The quiet felt heavy and dense. At last, Jademark said, please wait here while I make some calls. I genuinely stared at my parents as he walked out of the office. In some way they appeared smaller, their self-righteous rage giving way to dread. Mom said you did this. You ruined our family. No, I answered, getting to my feet and collecting my proof. You did that on your own. I didn't blink when I looked into her eyes. I just want to make sure you can't ruin anyone else. One more buzz on my phone revealed a message from Jade. I found more. You must see this when you're finished. Elliot sadly nodded when I handed him the message, but the worst was yet to come because the day wasn't quite finished yet. Back at the office, Jade was pacing, her normal composure totally destroyed, and she threw a pile of documents at me as soon as I entered. Look at this. She indicated a string of transactions. Your parents' shadow account. They've been operating a small-scale Ponzi scheme through the country club, and it's not just about paying for Sienna's expenses. Grabbing the papers, Elliot asked, what kind of scheme? The money is just being moved around to pay previous investors and finance Sienna's lifestyle. They have been investing other members' money, promising returns from some exclusive fund. My legs became wobbly. How much? I said. Jade displayed a spreadsheet and said, you know whose investment accounts they used as evidence of their success? Nearly $2 million. Mine. The word had an ashy flavor. They persuaded people to invest by showing them your portfolio. Exactly. Their scam seemed plausible because of your success. Jademark called again, so I put my phone on speaker. We have a problem, Vivian. Your parents tried to take out big amounts of money from several accounts as soon as they left the bank. Did they succeed? He paused before continuing, no, we froze everything in time, but now they're saying you're trying to extort them, and they're threatening to report you to the Bar Association. Let them try. Jademark, I have another thing to tell you. They have been operating an investment scam, I said with a sour laugh. I was interrupted by a disturbance outside. Mom and Sienna followed my father as he stormed through the glass walls of the office. Reaching for her phone, Jade stated, we need security. No, let them come. I got up. You think you can destroy us? We'll take you down with us, Dad said, his cheeks flushed with anger. Really? Want to explain this to everyone first? I said, presenting the evidence of the Ponzi scam. His face lost its color and Mom gasped behind him. Where did that come from? Does it matter? I retorted. What matters is that you stole from everyone who trusted you, not just from me. It wasn't stealing. Dad was helping people invest, Sienna insisted. I insisted in what? There is no investment fund, just you living above your means while they took advantage of my success to entice more innocent people. Mom begged, if you just give us time, we can fix this. Time? To steal more identities? To forge more documents? To find more victims? Dad started to say you ungrateful, but Elliot moved to block our path. He cautioned, the police are already on their way, so think carefully about your next move. Sienna's voice raised, harsh with fright, you called the police? The bank did. Standard procedure after a fraud alert and attempted withdrawal, Jade remarked from her desk. 2 officers showed up in the doorway as if on cue. Is something wrong here? Dad looked visibly dejected. Mom broke down once more. However, Sienna glared at me and said, you really want to do this? He snarled, all right, but I'm not going down alone. I'll tell them everything, how you helped set up the accounts, how you knew about the investments. We both know that, but please keep talking. The authorities would love to hear about your job fraud too. But I didn't, I interrupted her. In order to gather statements, the cops entered the room. Dad's bluster gave way to defeat. Mom's tears became genuine, and Sienna, my younger sister, whom I had shielded her entire life, sat in stony silence as the cops went over the charges. I watched as my family's facade completely fell apart. It buzzed on my phone. A message from an unidentified number. We need to chat. Your parents owe me $210,000 and they stated you would guarantee the investment. Then another. Returns from your hedge fund relationships were promised. And even another. They said you were handling my retirement funds. The messages continued to come in. More victims, more lies, more lives lost as a result of my family's dishonesty. Are you okay? Elliot patted my arm. I honestly replied, no, but I will be since this ends today. I want to press charges. All of them. And I have evidence of additional financial crimes you need to see, I said, turning to the officers. Mom cried out, you can't. We're your family. I truly actually looked at them. My mom, who helped create my signature and taught me the value of honesty. My father, who used my accomplishment to deceive others and boasted about it. My sister, who demanded more even after taking everything I had earned. I said, no, you're not my family anymore. You're just criminals who happen to share my DNA. Family doesn't do this. Family doesn't steal, lie, and ruin lives. They were let out by the officers. Sienna glanced back at the door, her eyes poisonous, and spat, I hope you're happy. You've ruined everything. I felt strangely at ease as I watched them leave. No, I muttered, I simply prevented you from ruining anybody else. There's going to be fallout from this. More victims will come forward, Jade said, already bringing up additional data. I sat down at her desk and said, I know. So let's find them. Every last one. The day was not yet done, but for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt genuinely strong, not their sort of strength, which allows crimes and conceals secrets, but my own brand of strength, which is based on justice, truth, and moral judgment. And I had only just begun. Over the course of the following week, the victim statements continued to pour in, and Elliot and I had taken over the firm's conference room, which was now covered in connecting lines and pictures like a crime show investigation board. Every new discovery was like receiving a kick to the stomach. Elliot added another picture to the board and stated, there have been 14 victims so far, most of whom are senior citizens from the country club. Your parents were very good at picking their victims. We both looked up when there was a knock on the door and saw Jade Mark, who appeared tired. He put a USB stick on the table and said, you have to see this. We discovered offshore accounts that were hidden. My heart fell. How much? I said. They have been transferring funds to the Cayman Islands for months. They are almost at $3 million. That's not amateur hour anymore. That's serious financial crime, said Elliot quietly. Jade Mark paused before continuing. Some of the transfers were made late at night from your office computer. That's not possible. I scowled. Remember how Sienna used to come to visit you at work? She would always stay late and say she wanted to spend time with you. The cleaning crew, Jade replied, emerging in the doorway. The parts came together with a click. I mutely remarked she was using my computer after I left. She must have installed a keylogger during one of her visits, Jade said, because her login credentials exactly matched yours. Another call from the county jail buzzed through my phone. Like I did with a dozen others that week, I chose to ignore it. Jade Mark added softly, this crossed state lines. It's federal now. The FBI wants to talk to you. Good. Because I found something else they'll want to see. I got up and stretched. I took out a file I had been storing and it had printed pictures, screenshots of my parents' recent trips and posts from their social media accounts. I drew attention to the dates and said, every significant withdrawal from the victims' accounts corresponds with a luxurious trip. This is Sienna shopping in Paris, Dad golfing in Dubai, and Mom on a yacht in Greece. They weren't even trying to hide it, Elliot said, shaking his head, all funded with stolen money and posted online for everyone to see. Another knock, and this time it came from Evelyn, one of my mother's best friends, an old woman I knew from the country club. She stepped in quietly and said, I apologize for interrupting, but I had to tell you something. I motioned for her to take a seat. She produced an old picture of me from high school, with my parents grinning happily and Sienna standing a little apart, taking in the scenery. Evelyn started off by saying, your mother told me something that day. She said that because you were so naturally gifted, you'd be fine on your own, but Sienna would need extra help. She also indicated that she would always have to work harder for Sienna. My throat constricted. 15 years ago she told you that? Yes, I now see that they have been preparing this for years, portraying you as the strong, successful one, so they can use your reputation to support Sienna. The realization struck like a punch to the body. They had fostered my entire adult life, my job, my success, and my reputation. Not with arrogance. However, with calculation. Jade Mark said, Helen Brooks called me this morning. She will lose her house because she lost her husband's life insurance money to your parents' scheme. I firmly stated, no, she won't. We're going to track down every penny they stole, beginning with those offshore accounts. I know someone at the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. We can expedite this, said Elliot, who was already making calls. Once more, my phone buzzed. Mom texted me. We may face 21 years according to the attorneys. Please, dear, please one final time help us. I showed Elliot. He replied softly, they're still attempting to use your strength against you and manipulate you. I turned to Evelyn and said, I know. How many other victims haven't come forward yet? She cast her gaze downward. A lot. Evelyn added softly, your parents were so respected in the community. They're embarrassed. They're ashamed. I made the decision, then we'll help them too. Every single one of them. Every last person they lied to. The computer of Jade pings. I got something, she said, spinning the screen. A number of transfers to a Singaporean account. Not long ago too. Made immediately following your altercation at the bank. Elliot came to the realization that they were organizing their escape. I concluded by saying they would have taken everyone's money and left me to handle the fallout if we hadn't stopped them. Once more, my phone buzzed. Families look out for one another, and we are family. Mom texted. I answered this time. They do, that's why I'm shielding the others from you. I then looked at the team. Let's get to work. We have victims to locate, justice to serve, and money to trace. You really are the strong one, dear. Just, not in the way they intended, Evelyn said, touching my hand. I glanced up at the pictures on the wall of faces whose lives had been destroyed, of people who believed and trusted. I could feel it, the strength to stop them, not the strength to remain silent or to cover for others. No, I answered softly, I'm just doing the right thing, which they never had the strength to do. As I gripped the last file, the federal courthouse towered over me. Every transaction, victim, and falsehood was scrupulously recorded. As we entered, I was surrounded by 2 FBI officers, whose presence was both comforting and bizarre. Agent Torres said, are you prepared for this? I've spent weeks getting ready. The doors of the courtroom opened. Dad's golf tan had faded, Mom's fancy clothes had been replaced by modest business wear, and Sienna looked like a stranger in her basic black suit, shoulders stooped, eyes empty, sat at the defense table with their lawyers. Vivian Pierce is called by the prosecution. I could feel their eyes burning into me as I made my way to the witness stand, and Mom mouthed, please, as I went by. I didn't turn around. Miss Pierce, the DA said, please describe to the court how you initially learned about your family's financial irregularities. I inhaled deeply. It began when my bank called regarding my sister's mortgage. I told everything over the next hour. The fake signatures. The identity that was taken. The Ponzi scheme. The accounts that are located abroad. The employment applications were modified. The retirement savings. The falsehoods. I saw their meticulously crafted facades crumble with each new discovery. The DA held up printed Instagram images and questioned, in these luxury purchases? Made with victim funds. Yes, I stated unequivocally, my sister was sharing Instagram stories from 5-star hotels in Paris while elderly victims lost their life savings. Objection. Prejudicial, said Sienna's attorney. The judge answered, overruled. Go on. As I looked directly into the jury's eyes, I declared, the total amount stolen exceeds $5 million. There was silence in the room. No more secrets. No more embarrassment. Just the facts. As well as justice. They used my identity, my credentials, and my reputation to entice victims into their scheme, I remarked in a firm and uncompromising voice. And the victims, said the DA. So far, 28 people have been confirmed, mostly senior citizens of the country club who trusted my parents and our family name. Isn't it true that you benefited from your family's financial success? Dad's attorney stood. No, I firmly said, they stole everything they had, and I earned everything I have. But you must have known, I interrupted, saying what I knew was that my parents destroyed lives while hiding behind my reputation, that they taught me to believe in integrity while secretly planning to use my success for their fraud, and that my sister cried about needing help while spending stolen money on luxury goods. There was silence in the courtroom. I have here a list of every victim, every dollar stolen, and every false investment promise made, I said, removing one last page. I'm also providing evidence of additional offshore accounts we've uncovered, I said. Behind me, Mom began to cry real, broken tears, not the theatrical sobbing she usually does. The judge leaned forward and said, Miss Pierce, do you realize that your family will probably go to jail because of this testimony? Yes, Your Honor. They are aware that their actions cause poverty for innocent people. This isn't fair. You had everything, the perfect career, the perfect life. What about me? Sienna said in a harsh voice as she abruptly got to her feet. The judge shouted order and struck his gavel. What about Mr. Roberts? He can no longer afford his wife's medical care. What about, I shot back. What about Helen Brooks? She's losing her house because of you. Dad bellowed, enough. We did it for you. To ensure that you would always look after your sister. With another pounding of his gavel, the judge threatened to clear the court if anyone had another outburst. However, I wasn't done yet. You did it for yourself because it was simpler to take than to work, to lie than to earn, and to ruin lives than to create them. Your Honor, we would like to enter these new documents into evidence, the DA said as he stood. The files were gathered by the bailiff. At last I turned to face my family. With tears streaking her makeup, Mom had fallen against Dad. Dad's jaw was clenched as he looked straight ahead. And Sienna gave me such a hateful look that I almost lost my breath. As I passed by, she growled, I hope you're happy. I paused. No, I'm devastated and not happy, but I'm also done defending those who take advantage of others. Griffin, Jade, and Jade Mark waited outside the courtroom. How was it? Elliot inquired. I remarked, the offshore account sealed it, so they'll be lucky to receive minimum sentences. The bank has already begun the restitution process for the victims, Jade Mark said with a somber nod. This morning, the FBI discovered 2 additional accounts in Switzerland, Jade continued. It buzzed on my phone. Mom texted me. Please, for the sake of our family, we can still repair this. Without replying, I removed it. Family was not about protecting or condoning illegal activity. Doing the right thing, even if it hurts, was the main goal. Next week is the sentencing, I muttered. After that, it's truly over. Elliot gave me a shoulder hug and said, no, then justice finally begins. I felt somehow lighter when I left the courthouse. I had not just been freed by the truth. It had empowered me to release others as well. From falsehoods. From deceit. From deception. And that was more valuable than any perverted form of familial allegiance. It was a standing room only sentencing hearing. All of the victims came to see justice done. As the judge was ready to render the decision, Helen Brooks sat next to me and silently held my hand. The judge said, would any of the defendants like to make a final statement before I announce the sentences? First to stand, Mom shook and said, we made terrible mistakes, but we did it out of love. No, to my amazement, I stood. May I speak, Your Honor? The magistrate gave a nod. Elderly neighbors' retirement monies are not stolen by love. Love doesn't steal identities or fabricate signatures. While sharing pictures from a lavish vacation, love doesn't ruin lives. They didn't act out of love. It was avarice. Unadulterated and straightforward. Dad leaped up and said, how dare you? The judge gave a firm command, Mr. Pierce, please sit down. I hereby sentence Gordon Pierce to 18 years in federal prison, Angela Pierce to 15 years, and Sienna Pierce to 12 years, in light of the seriousness of these offenses, the systematic character of the fraud, and the devastating impact on the victims, he added. Murmurs broke out throughout the room. Sienna broke down in tears. When Mom reached for Dad, a bailiff stopped her. The judge also stated, the offshore accounts will be frozen and repatriated, and all assets will be seized and liquidated to repay the victims. Helen Brooks gave my hand a squeeze. She said thank you. I can keep my house now. Sienna turned to me one more time as they escorted my family away. This is something I will never forgive you for. I muttered, I know, but the victims won't ever forgive you either. I was given an envelope by Elliot outside the courthouse. The firm decided that they wanted you to lead the new victim restitution program, he stated. When I opened it, I discovered a formal letter. You're uniquely qualified to use your experience to help other fraud victims. Jade joined us. Griffin smiled and asked, who better to help people rebuild after betrayal? The buzzing on my phone. A note from Jade Mark. Today is the first victim repayment. Well done, Vivian. Evelyn came forward, accompanied by a number of other members of the country club. To celebrate justice and fresh starts, we're having dinner tonight, she whispered softly. Will you come? Something changed inside of me as I looked at their faces. They were survivors now, not victims. I would be honored. You know that advice forum where you used to post about family drama? There's something else, Elliot replied. I nodded. I had found comfort in posting my experience online during the darkest days after learning of my family's betrayal. Well, people are referring to you as the fraud fighter after your post went viral. Jade went on to say, a support group for victims of financial abuse in families is forming. They want you to speak at their first meeting. Share your story. Help others find their strength. The doors of the courthouse opened once more. They guided my family to several conveyance vehicles. For the last time I saw them leave. Not like my parents. Not as my sister. But as criminals with repercussions. Are you ready to go? Elliot inquired quietly. Almost. I looked around at the casualties. Here's my card. My door is always open for anyone who needs assistance repairing their credit, resolving legal matters, or simply needing someone to talk to. You turned something terrible into something helpful. That's real strength, Helen Brooks said, giving me a hard hug. I felt at last at peace that evening at supper, surrounded by folks who had been wounded but were getting better. There was silence on my phone. No more deceptive texts. No more trips of guilt. No more falsehoods. Evelyn raised her glass and said, a toast to justice, to truth, and to the courage to fight for both. I looked around the table and said, and to family, the kind we choose, not the kind that chooses to harm us. I viewed the victim restitution papers by myself in my office later that evening. Each one stood for a person attempting to start over after being betrayed. As I had. Elliot gently rapped on the door. Are you sure you're prepared for tomorrow's first support group meeting? I turned the photograph face down and picked up the last family portrait taken before everything fell apart. We seemed happy and flawless in it, but now I could see the greed behind their poses and the calculation beneath their grins. I declared I'm ready because this is no longer just about justice, it's also about prevention, assisting others in seeing the warning signs I failed to see, and transforming victims into survivors. That's my strong one, he added, grinning subtly. I told him, no, that's my decision. Encouraging negative behavior is not the definition of strength. Just because criminals are related to you doesn't mean that you should protect them. It's about sticking up for what's right, even if it hurts. I took another look at the files. At everyone who is waiting for assistance. For optimism. For therapeutic purposes. So let's get to work, I remarked, putting the picture aside. There's still more to hear. There are still fights to fight. And more lives to reconstruct. Because preserving your family doesn't always lead to the happiest outcomes. They originate from self-preservation. And encouraging others to follow suit. Ultimately, I didn't gain my retribution by yelling or setting bridges on fire. I earned it by refusing to let betrayal define me, standing tall and choosing truth. Peace is sometimes the most effective form of retaliation. Therefore, establish boundaries if you're in pain. Get better. Make an investment in yourself. In becoming someone they can never touch again, not in proving them wrong. Please tell your tale here if you have ever been betrayed. Instead of silence, let's create a space for strength. The true question is, however, what does rising above look like to you?